Kakadosh Boker Tov. We're continuing with the Daf Yomi. This is going to be on Pechet Amud Aleph. This is 88A1. So the Gemara was speaking about Ula. Ula said, what was one of the reasons why we went into exile to Bavel? So Ula says, Kedesh yochelu temarim v'yasku b'Torah, which means that we went over there to eat good dates, and therefore we will be fitting to learn Torah with the dates, and therefore we don't have to look for a parnasah. Remember, the dates in itself, right, are very, very good. They, first of all, it doesn't say here in the footnote, it says something else. Here it says because the mechamimim et haguf mechazkim et kocho shel adam. But according to that, so then why does it say v'lo yitzarchu litroch lemezonotehim? Right? What is the kesher? What is the concept? So here he wants to say no, because that way they don't have to work a lot, and then they'll get the parnasah. However, though, right, if you want, you could also answer very, very simple. We know the dates, they satiate. They are zayin. That's why the Gemara actually brings down, and the Halacha brings down, Mishabura says that to do with dates are one of the things which actually are mezin. They give you, they satiate you. Therefore, a lot of times before a fast, you would want to eat dates. Okay, it's very, very good. So now Ula, it says over here, Ula ikla lepumpedita. So Ula, says the Gemara, he went to visit Pumpedita. So they brought him a basket full of dates. Amarlu, he said, Kama kihane bezuza. How much are these are bought with one zuz? Amrule, they told him, Tlat bezuza. 3 of them are bought with one zuz. Amar, he went and he said, Melot sana deduvsha bezuza. If you have an entire sal, an entire basket of dvash, right, of honey is going to be sold with a zuz. Ubavlai lo aske beoraita. I don't understand you. How could it be that this is going to be sold with a zuz, and what, the Babylonians are not going to be learning Torah? How could it be? For sure they have to be learning the Torah. Belelia siaruhu. What happened? All of a sudden, he ate so much of the dates, all of a sudden in the nighttime, right? He was in the washroom, right? It wasn't the most pleasant thing for him. All of a sudden, they started causing him harm. Why? Because he had a very loose stomach, to say it in a very nice way. Yeah, so what happened? So Amar, so he went and he said, Melot tzana sama demota bezuza bebavel ubavlea askobo, right? And now he said the opposite. At the beginning, he was coming and saying, what is this? If you could buy it so cheap and they're not learning Torah, how could it be? But after he eats so much, and then in the nighttime, he himself is there in the washroom for a while, right? And it's causing him so much difficulty. So now all of a sudden he went and he says, what? An entire basket of samamavet, of poison, you're going to buy with it. That's what they're eating. And still they're learning Torah, which means the opposite. We should be mitpaleh. We should actually be surprised at how could they still be learning Torah, albeit that they are coming and suffering so much because of these dates. V'amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar, what does it mean in the pasuk when it says "Ve'alechu amim rabim ve'amru lechu v'na'aleh el Hashem el beti Elokei Yaakov"? What does it mean? Right. Again, we were talking about a whole bunch of dirashot of Rabbi Elazar in the previous daf. So now we continue, and it says, what does it mean that there's going to be a lot of rabim, a lot of amim rabim, a lot of different nations, and they're going to say that we're going to go up to the mountain of Hashem, to the house of the God of Jacob. Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Avraham Yitzchak. Why is it only Elohei Yaakov and not Elohei Avraham Yitzchak? That's the question. So he comes and he says, Ela lo ke'Avraham shekatuv bo har, shneimar asher yamer hayom behar Hashem yireh. ולא כי יצחק שכתוב בו שדה, שנאמר ויצא יצחק לסוח בשדה, אלא כי יעקב שקראו בית. The Bet HaMikdash is called on the name of Yaakov Avinu because Avraham Avinu called the Harabait, he called it a har, he called it a mountain, right? As it says, Behar Hashem Yireh, right? The next one was Yitzchak Avinu, he called it a sadeh, ויצא יצחק לסוח בשדה, that he went out to pray in the sadeh. Remember that sadeh was the Harabait. However, though, Yaakov Avinu came and he called it a house, a bait. Shnema ve'ikra shem hamakom hahu Bet El, the house of God, right? The Bet El. So therefore, because of that, that's why it's called, the Bet HaMikdash is called Elokei Yaakov, after the God of Yaakov Avinu. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Gadol kibbutz galuyot kiyom shenivru bo shamim v'aretz. It is so great, that which is the concept of kibbutz galuyot, they're going to bring together, right, all the galuyot, right, which is called all the kibbutz galuyot, more he says over here, just like the when it was created, the heaven and the earth. Shneimar v'nikvitzu bnei Yisrael v'Yisrael yachtav, yismu lahem rosh echa ve'alu min haaretz ki gadol yom Yisrael, right? Uchtiv v'netzvet v'yever v'voker yom echad. So from the fact that it's written Yom Gadol, right, and it's written Yom by the, again, this they learn by the Kibbutz Kaliyot, which is so great, just like the Yom HaGadol, which is the Yom of the creation of the world. So just like Shamayim V'Aretz were created, it was right in Vayirav V'Yivoker Yom Echad. So too, the Yom here is talking about Yom Gadol. That's how great it is. Okay? And then that's it. We get to the two dogs. Okay, now we're going back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, what happens if you have an orphan, sheshachtu alav apotropusim? So you have an orphan, and this orphan, they went, and the apotropos, the one that was his custodian or his guardian, whichever one you want to call it, he went and they did the shechita, they went and they did the shechita for the sitomim. So says the Gemara, so he could eat it wherever he wants. So says the Gemara, Shema Mina, we learn from here, yesh brera, right? Just like we started off the previous Gemara to do with the women, right? If you remember, or women are able to come and are able to do it, whether it's she's by the father or by the husband. And then we wanted to say that there is brera, and then we pushed that off and said that there's not true, right? Because so the same thing, that's what we're doing right now here. Here it says Shema Mina, we want to learn from here, yesh brera, right? Why? Because it comes out that during the time of the Shat Achila, right, during the time that when he's going to eat it, now it's going to be decided where did he want to do it. So it's going to come retroactively that he wanted to do it, right, during the time of the Shechita, if they would have told him that they're doing it for him. So therefore, he's part of that count. He's part of that register. Okay? So says the Gemara, it's not true. Why? Amar Bizera, says a Bizera, it's written Selabait. What does that mean? Mikomakom. It says, when it says Selabait, right, where it says that you're going to bring, right? Selabait, he's going to bring a sheep for the house, it comes out that it's going to be even against your will, which means since this yatom, since this orphan is considered the ben bait by the apotropos. So remember, this guy is his legal agent, he's his legal guardian. So since he's the legal guardian, so then what happens is that at the end of the day, the apotropos is able to count this orphan under his domain, and therefore it goes against his will. So it's not because that there is brera, nothing to do with brera, even without brera. The fact that it's automatic that he's part of the household. Okay? Yes, very good. So Tanu Rabbanan, so we learned in a Braita. Yeah? Selabait. What does that mean, Selabait? He says, Melamed she'adam mevi v'shochet al yedei beno v'ito ketanim. When it says over here, when you're going to say Selabait, it means that a person could come and bring a Korban Pesach and slaughter it through, right? What do you mean through? Not through, but for his children that they're younger. Or for his servant, but we're talking about an Eved Kena'ani, not an Eved Ivri, but rather an Eved Kena'ani or a Shivcha Kena'anit. Ben Midatan, Ben Shluminatan, whether knowingly or not knowingly. And not the older ones, and not the Hebrew ones, meaning the Jewish ones, or for his wife, unless it's going to be with their consent. Okay, which means, so here obviously in the footnote it says that we're talking about in a case where, for example, he's not obligated to give her parnasa. So, for example, she comes and she says, "Eni nuzar v'eni osa," which means that, you know what, you don't give me parnasa, and I'm going to work and I'm going to make my own money. So in such a case, since it could be that he's not obligated in this case to work for her, which means to give her parnasa, so therefore it can't be against her will. So therefore it's only knowingly, right? That means that she wants it, so then it's going to count. But if not, no, it doesn't count, okay? Tanya Idach, we also learned in another Braita, לא ישחוט אדם לא על ידי בני וביתו הגדולים, ולא על ידי ישחטו בשחטו העברים, ולא על ידי אשתו על מדתן, אבל שוחט הוא על ידי בנו וביתו הקטנים, על ידי עבדו בשחטו הקטנים, במיתו משול ביתן. So this Braita was the exact same, but just it went the opposite way. Okay, the first Braita is that a person could do it against their will, but it's only talking about beno vito ketanim, or right, avdo b'shivchato kenanim, and then it switched to the other way around, which is that he has to do it with consent to beno vito agdolim, to the children which are above, right, which are basically they're not going to be supported by him, or by avdo b'shivchato ivrim, the Jewish people, or by his wife. Okay, now in the second Braita, it just swapped it. Okay, the kulan sheshachtu. The Shachat Rabban Alehen says, in all these cases, he says, when they slaughter the Korban Pesach for themselves, the Shachat, and all of a sudden now their master came and they did it for them as well. Yotzim Mishel Rabban and Yotzim Mishel Atzman. Right? They are going to be Yitzei Chovah with their masters, but not with their own one. Chutz Mina Isha, Shechola Limchot. Except for the wife, that the wife could come and she says that she doesn't want to do it with her husband. So since she could say that she doesn't want to do it with her husband, so if she's going to slaughter it for herself, she's going to be tzechovah and not of the husband. The other ones, if the husband is doing it, meaning if the adon, the master is doing it, right, or the father, whichever, for the children, whichever one, it's going to be that they're going to do it for their own, and they're not going to be Yitzei Chova. Here, the woman is the only exception to the rule that she's going to be Yitzei Chova. So ask the Gemara, what's the difference? Why is it that a woman would be Yitzei Chova with her own, right? And she doesn't have to go after the husband at all. So he says, why? Amar Rava says, Isha v'chol dedamila. You're right. It's not only just a woman. It's the woman and everyone which is compared to her. So who do we compare to the women?
The children.
Which children now?
Before the bar mitzvah.
No, the older ones. The older ones.
The older ones. Okay.
Older ones. Remember, the ones which are below bar mitzvah, that's beno bito ketanim. Those are minors. Those ber midatam min shluminatam, whether they had consent or not, automatic. They're under the father, right? So it's the older ones, right? You're on the ball, yeah? So what happens? Yeah? Yeah? Very good. So he says over here, he has no phone. The phone that he has is with the Zoom. Yeah? So he says, so what happens? So he says the concept is that he's doing it, right, against her will. So you're right. When it says Isha, it's lav davka Isha. It's Isha and anyone that's compared to the Isha. Anyone that's compared to the woman. Okay? Very good. Next. Okay? Hagufa kasha, this in itself is a question. Amarta, you told us, chutz min isha sheyechola limchot, except for the woman because she could be moche, she could come and she could, right, be moche. Tama, the reasoning why is demache, because she was moche. Halo mache, what happens if she didn't? You know what mecha is? Yeah? When somebody's using their phone in shiur, and then I come and I rebuke them, it's called a mecha. An objection. Very good. It's called an objection. Yeah, that's a mecha. Okay, so he says over here, the Gemara is going to make is going to ask the following question: the reason why the woman is Yitzur Chova with her own and she doesn't be counted with her husband is because she's mocha. She's able to come and say, "I don't want with my husband. I want mine," and then we're going to say it's okay. Says the Gemara, Amarta chutz min ha'isha sheyechola limchot, but she could do the mecha. She could come and object. Ta'ama, the reasoning why, is demache, because she did object. Halo mache, but she didn't object. So nafka b'shabela, she is going to be tzorcha with her husband. Vaktani reisha, but now you just said in the reisha, velo al yidei ishto, ela midatan. What does that mean that only with her consent? Hastama, lo nafka. So basically the question is like this. You right now, you did it for your wife. We have a contradiction in the actual braita in itself. Because in one braita it says, that right now, if she did one and the husband did one, she's not going to be tzedek chova of the husband. She's going to be tzedek chova of her own. Why? Because she could object. She could say, "I don't want to do it of the husband's. Yeah, I want to do mine." And then that's it. Perfect. Okay, no problem. So what does that mean? That means only if she objects is it good, which means that she could be tzedek chova with her own. But if she doesn't object, she's part of the husband. Correct? Very good. What was the first braita that we learned at the top? Right? What was the first braita? Tanu Rabbanan sela bayit. Right? Okay, fine. Then at the end, what does it say? Eno shochet al yidei beno bito gedolim al yidei ishto ela midatan. Midatan means we need her consent. So it's not that you need an objection or not an objection. You need her consent. There's two completely different worlds. Because to need her consent means you need that the woman will come and she's going to give her consent. Yeah, that she agrees to this. You understand? It's completely different. Right? It's very, very important. Okay? Fine. By the way, you should know this halakha is very, very important when we're learning Ilchot Kiddushin. When we learned Kiddushin, right, a woman, right, mitzad the Torah, she's only mitkadeshet midata, with her consent. And because she's only mitkadeshet with her consent, there were certain halachot that they made purposely in order to make sure that it's done with her consent. A man can't just come and forcefully, right, marry a woman. To divorce, mitzad halacha, it's the opposite. Mitzad halacha, which means once upon a time, a man could divorce his wife against her will, whether she was happy or not happy. Right? That's not a problem. A man could divorce. Today it changed because Cherem of Rabbeinu Gershom. But the Cherem of Rabbeinu Gershom is that you could only divorce your wife, right, midata, willingly. And by the way, right, that's why they're connected. You know that Rabbeinu Gershom, Meor Gula, he went and he made two different decrees. One decree was a person cannot add on another wife, and another one is that he cannot divorce his wife against her will. They're both connected because in order to have one, you need the other one. So basically, that was the entire concept, right? Why? Because if you're going to say you cannot, right, you cannot forcefully divorce your wife, okay, fine. So she doesn't want to get divorced. So what happens? she's going to tell you, live with me, taflak, right? So what's going to happen? So that's why it was the entire concept of, because if not, what's going to happen? Okay, you can't get married to another wife. No problem. I can't get married to another wife. Here's the get against her will. So to protect that a person could not get married to more than one wife, he had to make the other, meaning he had to have both decrees in place in order to have them being fulfilled. Because if not, the person's going to say, no problem. He divorced the wife against his will. He's not going to have two wives. No problem. She doesn't want me to have another one. Here, go. Right? Go to the father's house. Right? Where does he send the wife? Right? To the father's house. Yeah, there's an argument, boom, throw her out. Right? Nowadays, I said it's the opposite. Usually, if there's an argument, so she throws him into the toilet or into the couch in the, right, I don't know where. You understand? Or I don't know where. Yeah, but once upon a time, it was opposite. He would come and he would say, this is my house, you out. Yeah, that's the way it was. Okay?
Isn't it for the Ilchot Nida the same way that usually it's the woman that has to go sleep in if they have to change rooms?
I did hear of some people that they switch rooms. It is 100% incorrect.
Really?
Yes. You're not supposed to put her in cherem. She's not in cherem. She doesn't go into excommunication to send her into exile into another room. You understand? Huh? It's not good for the children. It's not good for anyone. You understand? It's against hashkafa. It's against halacha. It's against everything. You understand? A husband and wife are supposed to be in the same room, even if they cannot sleep together, but they are still in the same room. Okay?
It says יוצאת מדעתה ולא מדעתה, נכון? It says that יוצאת בשלושה דרכים or something like that.
Right. That's why. שלא מדעתה, במדעתה, means שלא מדעתה. That's to do with גיטין, not קידושין. קידושין has to be מדעתה. אין האישה מתקדשת אלא מדעתה.
Sorry.
Yeah, by גיטין, it's whether מדעתה or שלא מדעתה.
לא בדעתה או במידת הבעל, יוצאת. And it says also
בקידושין.
he gives us. So what I'm trying to understand, you think that physically he cannot, even if she doesn't agree, he cannot meet Garesh? I've never heard of that before.
Hold on one second. So what happens now is as follows. Yeah, it says over here, so everyone understood the contradiction. The contradiction is, it says over here that in one place that a woman only is going to be midata, which means that he could only count his wife into the Korban Pesach if he does it with her consent. In another place it says that she has to rebuke, but if she doesn't rebuke, she is considered okay, right? So says the Gemara, my ela midatam. What does it mean that only with their consent? Lav de amrein. It doesn't mean that they had to say yes. Ela bistama. Stama is already with their consent. La puke kadamalu. That comes to exclude say no. Meaning, the stama is that if you're going to do the korban pesach for your wife, she's already included. It doesn't mean that you have to have her consent. You have to ask her, darling, would you want me to count you in? You don't need to do it. Yeah, already she's in. If she says no, then no. But that's what it means. That means midatan does not mean that you have to actually ask for their consent. Automatically, it's already going to be a yes. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Veha kulam sheshachtu v'shachat, right? Rabban alehen, right? Yotzin b'sher Rabban. 1 second. If you're going to come and tell me that, so then you still have a question why. It says that in all these cases, if their master went and he did it for them, the mistama, right? There we're talking about mistama that they didn't make a mecha. Uktani, and we said, except for the woman, because she could rebuke. So since she could come and she could make such an objection, yeah, since she could come and she could make such an objection, so what happens that we're asking ourselves is that if she could make such an objection, so in 1 second, it's not like what you just said. You just said that there's a stama. What is the stama? The stama is that yes, it's not true, because here it says because she could object. So obviously that's not the stama. So he comes and he says, Amar Rava, Rava comes and he says, Kevan sheshachtu, en lecha michui gadol mizeh. He says, no, once they slaughtered it, there's no greater michui, there's no greater objection than this. Why? If a woman comes and she's slaughtering, does she have to tell you that she's objecting? It's obvious. Why? You're going to ask her, why are you slaughtering? Your husband did it. Well, obviously that means because she doesn't want to be part of the husband. She doesn't have to say anything, right? The action of her slaughtering her own separate Korban Pesach, that's the biggest micha that you have. Actions speak louder than words. Yeah? Okay, very, very good. So says the Gemara, right? So fine. Nekuda. We're by the 2 dots. What? What happened? Yeah? Okay, very good. Yeah? Fine. 2 dots. Eved shel shnei shutafim. Yeah, it says over here like this. Eved shel shnei shutafin. What do we say? We said that what happens if you have a slave that he is owned by two different partners?
You can choose.
Right? So he's not allowed to eat from either or. No.
Why?
Yeah. Well, we're going to see now. So Rami le Ravina Saba le Rav Nachman. Ask Ravina Saba to Rav Nachman. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Eved shel shnei shutafin. When you have a slave of two different partners, lo yochal mishel shnein. You can't eat from either or. So says the Gemara, why? The Braita says like Philip. The Braita says not the Mishnah, but the Braita says Vatanya. Ratza mizeh ochel mizeh, ratza mizeh ochel, which means choose. Yeah, choose. If I know that there's better meat, right, by Ronen's house, why am I going to come and get the worse meat somewhere else? You understand? Yeah, that's the question that we're asking. You understand or not? So, yeah, so Azloi, yeah. So the question is, that's what the Gemara is saying. There's a stira. The Mishnah is saying that you can't eat from either or. And then the Braita is saying that you could choose whichever one that you want. So Amalei, he comes and he says, Ena Saba, right? Ve'amri le patia ukma. So some people say that he went and he said that it's like a Ena Saba, like, you know, the eyes of the elder. But other people say that it's really be'emet, like a kli shachor, like a black black utensil, yes. So he comes and he says, what does that mean? So he comes and he says like this. He says, Mini uminach tistaim shmateta. Through me and through you, now we're going to get it clear. Meaning sometimes on your own, right, you only get a half, or you get a third, or you get a three-quarter. But all of a sudden when you come and you have two heads working together, all of a sudden it works. You understand? But you make a partnership. So he says, Matnitin bedekapte adade. The Braita de lo kapte adade. It all depends who are the owners. What does that mean? Sometimes you have two partners, right? That we're always makpidim. Why are we always makpidim? Because, for example, imagine right now we have a partnership that we have a slave, and all of a sudden you want to take the slave this Friday, and I come and say no, but it's my day. Say yeah, but I want it, and then we start arguing, and then it goes back and forth, and we're always makpidim on each other. Why? Because all of a sudden Yom Tov came out that day, and I want that day, and the other one wants the other day, and this happens, by the way, even until today. Sometimes it happens with cleaning ladies. Somebody once told me, never share your cleaning lady. Why? All of a sudden it comes a chag, it comes a this, it comes a that. You want to start changing. The other one wants to start changing. Each one wants for themselves. They started getting into arguments, and there it's not even a real. It's not even a real ownership, because you don't own, right, the person. But even with that, so they're makpidim. So he says, if the two owners are makpidim on each other, so then you can't eat from each other. Why? Because, for example, let's say, for example, one of them is going to come and he's going to, the slave is going to choose Ronen because he wants the good meat. Now what's going to happen is Ronen's going to say, listen, I want to give him, right, my part. But the other guy, he should give him his part. Why do I have to now start giving him the full thing? So since they're kapti adade, right, he cannot eat of either or. However, though, if they're not makpidim, which one? No, not shalom. Makpid or not makpid? There's a difference. Makpid means that I'm strict on you. I don't want it, meaning I don't want to give you a free ride. So every single time there's something I say, why is he coming to me? He's also his master. He should also pay attention to it. Sometimes it happens many times, right, that, for example, they're the children. So all of a sudden you have this kapti adadi or not between whether it's, you know, one set of parents and the other set of parents. So all of a sudden, let's say it's the husband's set of parents. He comes and he says, what is this? She's the girl. Her parents should also support. Her parents should do this. Why don't they do it? I have to do everything. What? It's always a free ride on my back and not on theirs. And sometimes the other way around. So it all depends. If they're kapti adade, which means they're makpidim one on each other, so then you can't eat from either or. Why? Because the slave is a problem.
Makpidim means they have differences?
No, makpidim means that I am upset. I'm makpid that I don't want you to benefit from me.
So between the owners.
Between the owners.
So there is a friction.
Exactly, friction. If you want to call it that way, friction. Okay, but it's not only just to avoid the shalom. It's a problem though, because again, one more time, what was the concept? The concept of Korban Pesach is that I'm coming and I'm registering you. So now, if this guy is my slave, so now he's under me, Gamarno. What happens now if he's my slave, but he's also your slave? Now, Chas v'Shalom, if we had a friction between us, I'm going to come and I'm going to say, okay, why is he choosing me? Because I give good meat tonight. Why doesn't Philip start dishing out a little bit? What? He always comes to me. So I'm makpid. You understand? I'm makpid. Yeah, I'm makpid. So he says, because of that, when they're makpidim, doesn't work. So now he can't eat by me and he can't eat by you. Can't by anybody. But if we're not makpidim, we're best of friends. Yeah, you know, I'm happy. I'm happy he's eating by me. That way you don't have to spend it. I'm happy he's eating by you. You're the same thing.
We're talking about a Jewish state.
Which one? In the slave? Yes. Korban Pesach, yes. I didn't understand. One more time?
He has to eat.
Yeah.
So when is he going to eat it?
No, but he can't eat it from the two masters. He'll have to eat his own separate one, or whatever it is. But he cannot eat it from the masters.
Also, it could be a conflict of interest for the Eved himself.
Why?
Because he gets something from one that he prefers from the other one, so he's going to treat them at the end of the day, one better than the other.
That we didn't see that. I'm saying if you have two workers, meaning if somebody works by you and works by somebody else, you can never come and you can never give them a bigger tip, or you can never come and give them something. I'm saying
no.
You understand?
Oui, mais c'est comme s'il dit, alors je sais que chez lui, chez Pessar, je vais m'éclater, donc je vais être gentil avec lui un mois avant. Let's say he knows, he's seeing that Pesach is coming and he's, I'm going to have a good, so for the next month, I'm going to be nicer to this guy than to the other guy. Could be, I'm just saying.
That there's no isur.
No.
You understand? There's no isur.
Will be patur from Korban Pesach because he's in an Evet status, Bechlal?
No, we said even an Eved Kenanim. Even Eved Kenanim, there was a writer. It says, אבל אינו שוחל לידי בן הממר, ועל ידי עבדו ושפחתו העברים, but the first one was Eved Kenani. Even the Eved Kenani and the Shifcha, they're going to be eating. Ben midatam, ben mishul midatam. Yeah?
I think, I just think that he's servicing him, not eating. I don't think the Eved Kenani lo chayav lechol Korban Pesach. I think it's just referring here to be a representative, to take it to the Shechita, not to actually eat it. Because it says, Ushachat al-yedei b'no b'to ktanim, just with the inyan shel shechita, not the achila, because I would think that they're not mechuyav b'korban Pesach. Shochet al-yedo, but not for physically to eat it.
No, shochet al-yedei zavur. Avur
b'no b'to gdolim.
Avur.
But he didn't say.
לא, עבור בנו וביתו הקטנים, ועל ידי עבדו ושפחתו הקטנים, במדינתם ולמשלתם.
I think that they would be excluded because midoraita they're not chayav b'korban Pesach, Evet Knani.
It's not the pasuk.
It's impossible that there'll be chova to eat korban Pesach. There's no way. Even though they're working for you as a maid, as a thing, I think it's just assisting in the shechita, assisting in the process. No?
What I don't understand is that an Eved Kenani is chayav b'mitzvot kemo isha. Yeah, all those things. So then why, if a woman is obligated, why wouldn't the Eved be?
No,
also,
because that Ger Toshav you're right. He's Ger Toshav, he has Brit Milah.
Eved Kenani also.
No, but Eved Kenani is not mechuyav lasot Brit Milah. But the Ger Toshav has to, and therefore the Ger Toshav, I would say he has to eat Korban Pesach. Yesh lo Brit Milah.
Okay,
you can't be Arel. No, I'm saying you cannot be Arel to eat Korban Pesach. You should tell me that Eved Kenani he cannot have the Korban Pesach, even if you tell me that. I'm not
understanding you. You do a Brit Milah for an Eved. Eved Kenani gets a Brit Milah.
I thought it's only Ger Toshav.
No. Eved Kenani for sure. Eved Kenani for sure.
So if he has a Brit Milah, that's not an issue.
Eved Kenani for sure. So says the Gemara now, right? Mi shechetzio Eved v'chetzio ben chorin lo yochal mishel rabo. The same halacha. That means, remember, just like before we mentioned that if a person has two masters, which means that their partnership in this slave, now this guy is also two partners. Himself, because he's chetzi ben chorin, he's chetzi free, plus he's got chetzi avdut. So imagine this guy is your slave for half the time. Half the time he's your slave, and half the time he's a free man. So what happens? He cannot eat from his master as well. Okay, so says the Gemara, why? Because minastam, the master does not want to give him to his chelek of the ben chorin. Meaning the master is going to come and say, okay, fine. To the portion of himself that he's my slave, I want to give him to eat. For the portion that he's free, why should I pay for that? You understand? He's a free man. Let himself do his own or whatever. So it says, the Gemara is going to ask a contradiction. So 1 second, what do we understand from here? We understood at the beginning that Keilu, he can eat from his master, but who can he eat from? His own. But then it says over here, yeah, but then there's another braita that says mefurash, lo yochal lo mishelo, velo mishel rabo. He can't have his own, and he can't have the master as well, right? So again, we're going to have this question that we have. So now, obviously, why can't he eat from his own? Because part of his own is also an eved. So he belongs to his master, and the master could do it against.
How technically can we have?
How technically? Very simple. You have a person that he sells himself to you, and all of a sudden, he gets some money. So what he does is he pays you. Now he doesn't have enough money to completely redeem himself. He only pays you for half. So now he becomes a free man for half the time. So for example, he could do with you that maybe he's going to work on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Yeah, it's like a part-time slave because he acquired back his freedom, but half. Right? That's chetzi ben chorin v'chetzi eved. That's what's called chetzi chetzi. By the way, you should know it's a very big problem. Chetzi chetzi. Usually, once they do that, they force the master to completely free him. And the reason why is because once he becomes chetzi chetzi, he cannot get married to a regular Jewish woman because he's half slave, and he can't get married to a shifcha because he's half free. A free man cannot get married to a shifcha, and a slave cannot get married to a regular Jewish woman. So what? So because he cannot, basically you put him in limbo. So then usually what happens is we force the master to actually free the slave. That's what we usually do. But here it's, forget about now to do with the halachot of, marriages and things like that. Here's just talking about a technical issue to do with Korban Pesach. So he's half-half. So says halacha. One halacha said that he eats from his own. Another one says he can't eat from his own nor from his master. So says, that's not a question. What does that mean? The braita that was coming and teaching us was like the first psak of Bet Hillel, that somebody that's chetzi eved, chetzi ben chorin, we do not force the master to free them, and therefore the chelek avdut does not go after the chelek of the. That's what it says over here. Nimshach dato shel eved, ela it's talui badon. But here we're talking about already Mishnah Charona. Mishnah Charona is that after they retracted, they agreed to Bet Shammai that we do force the master to free the slave. So since the Bet Din are forced to come and free him, basically to force him to free him, so therefore already from now he's considered Ben Chorin. So since he's considered Ben Chorin, that's why he could slaughter to himself and he's allowed to eat from his own korban. So the one that at the beginning it said he cannot eat from his own and not eat from his master, that's Mishnah Rishona. Mishnah Rishona means the first time, that means before Bet Hillel retracted, they agreed to Bet Shammai that you have to force them. But now, according to Bet Hillel, that also like Bet Shammai, that you force the master to free him, now he could eat from himself. There's no problem. Okay, the Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, there's in Gittin. So what happens if a person's half-half? That was Philip's question. What do you do? So the Mishnah there says, he works for himself one day, works for his master one day. So one day for himself, one day master, one day himself, master. Divrei Bet Hillel, these are the words of Bet Hillel. Bet Shammai, only Bet Shammai come and they say, Pechet Amubet, 88b. Yeah, Tikantem et Rabo, Bet Atzmo lo Tikante. You only fix the master. What about fixing himself? The master you fixed, so you're right. So he's going to serve himself one day. He's going to serve everyone else himself one day and his master one day. So you fix the master. What about himself? Why? Lisa isha enu yechol, shivcha enu yechol. He cannot get married to a shivcha, to a maidservant. Shekvar chetz yom echrubas. He's half free, and a free man couldn't get married to a maidservant. Lisa bat chorni, you can't get married to a regular woman. Shaday because he's still a chetz yevet. Yibatel what? He's not going to get married at all. The world was created for Pidya v'Rivya. Shene'emar, as it says in the pasuk, lo tohu v'ra'a lashevet yitzara, which means that Kadosh Baruch Hu did not create the world that it should be empty, but rather that it should be a yishuv. What does it mean it should be a yishuv? A yishuv means that you should have people living in the world, that they should be the multitudes in the world. So it says, Ela mipnei tikkun ha'olam, but because of tikkun ha'olam, which means that he should be able to have children, we force the master to come to make him into free man, but then he's going to write the document on half of his value. Which means at the end of the day, we're not going to force the master to free him and then he gets set free. This is the best way. Think about it. What is a
pay half of you?
Yeah, and then that's it. You get free. No.
Yeah, the master is not obligated to accept.
No, here we force the master to accept.
No, before when he wants to pay half, the master cannot accept.
You're saying he cannot accept. Why? Why doesn't he have to accept?
Because he knows that he's gonna have to free him for
if I remember, okay, I don't remember now off my heart. These are not halachot that we usually learn every single day of Eved Ivri. But if I remember correctly, I think there was such a concept of that ododo yigalenu, all those psukim, that there was a thing of redemption. That if they did have the money, they would redeem it. Remember, the Torah does not want a person to become an Eved Ivri. So we never wanted that. You understand? So therefore, because of that, if a person now has the money, he didn't have money, he had to sell himself. All of a sudden, he won the lottery. You're going to tell me that he's going to come to you and he wants to pay you. You're going to say, no, I want you to be my slave. You're saying, well, I don't understand. But anyway, he doesn't lose anything now. Why doesn't he lose anything now? Because what happens is that even after the Mishnah Achrona, which means even after Bet Hillel retracted, they still paskin that what are you going to do now? He comes and he gives you half the price. He redeemed himself half. Now we, at the beginning, we didn't force the master to come and to redeem him. Now we force the master, you have to liberate him. But he has to write himself another document on the rest of the money, which means that he doesn't go out scot-free. He owes the other half. But now it's a debt document. Because beforehand, he had to pay it off. Right? He had to pay it off. He had to work it off. It means I'm not letting him free until he pays off his debt. Now I'm letting him free so he could get married, but he still owes me half his amount. You understand? It means he has to write. That's what it says here. He's going to write the kotev shtar al chatzi damav. He's going to write a document, a debt document. He owes money. He's indebted. He's got a lien. So I do let him free, but this is a lien. Okay? And then again, Bet Hillel retracted. They passed like Bet Shammai that we do actually do that. We force the master to free him, to liberate him, and then he gets a thing. Says the Mishnah Pechet Amubet, 88b. Imagine right now a person comes and he tells his servant, go do the shechita for me, the korban pesach. Now he didn't explain to him whether he wanted a gedi or a tle, whether he wanted a sheep or goat, a kid. Remember, it's the baby. Yeah, but it's until a shana. Okay? Shachat gedi, yochal. Shachat tele, yochal. So since he didn't explain what he wanted, so whichever one that he gets, whether it's going to be the kid or the sheep, whatever, it's going to be okay. No problem. Okay. Now, shachat gedi vitle. What happens if he did both? Yochal min hadishon. So eat from the first one. Meaning the slave did not know which one he really intended. So he did both. He did for the korban pesach also a gedi and also a tle. Whichever one he did first, that's the one that you do. Okay. Next, shachach ma'amar lo rabo. What happens if the master did explain to him, but the servant forgot? Meaning the guy was a chamor. The master tells him, "I want you to give me a gedi." Yeah. Well, then the guy, what did he tell me? He told me a gedi or tle. I have no idea. I don't remember.
Miami.
Why Miami?
The employees of Miami.
I wouldn't say only employees. There's a lot of chamorim that are walking around. Okay, but it's okay. Fine. But then it says over here, he says, the master, he forgets. Yeah, he told him one thing, he did something else. He comes and he says, Shachach ma'amar lo rabo, keitzad ya'aseh. What's he going to do? He says, Yishchat tle ugdi. He has to do both. V'yomar. He's going to make a condition. What is he going to say? In gedi amali rabbi, gedi shelo, v'tle sheli. V'im tle amali rabbi, hatle shelo, v'gedi sheli. It all depends. Whatever my master said, that's what I'm giving him. And whatever the other one, it's mine. Yeah, that's what he's going to do. Shachach rabo ma'amar lo. Now, what happens if the master, right, and, meaning the slave and the master, yeah, so now they're both hamorim, yeah, also the slave and also the master, yeah, so what happens? Shnehem yetzu lebet hasrefa. Now, since nobody knows what each one said, now they both have to go to the bet hasrefa, upturim la'asot pesach sheni, but now they do not have to do a pesach sheni, right? Which means because even though they weren't able to eat it because of the safek, because now what happens is that maybe Be'emet the Pesach was not Ninuyav, right? Because we don't know which one was the master and which one now was the slave. Because one of them for sure belonged to the master, one of them belonged to the slave, but we don't know who's whose. So that means if I'm going to now come and say, you know what, this one is for the master. Yeah, but maybe that one was for the slave, so the master can't eat it. And if the one was for the slave, yeah, but that one's for the master, maybe, so now he can't, so nobody can eat it anymore. So therefore,
doesn't the master have a choice to choose this point?
No, because remember, it has to be Limnuyav. Now, I was a master. I went and I told the Eved, get me, let's say, a gedi.
And you forgot.
I forgot and he forgot. So he brought both. Now, what's the Miman of Shach? He cannot say now, if he told me one, it's his, because now if I forgot and he forgot, we both forgot, so now we have a technical problem. Now what happens? Because if you're going to give the gedi to the master and the tle goes to him, maybe it was the other way around. Or if you're going to go, so since you don't know anymore, now it's not Ninuyav. There's no registered people anymore. There's no registered people. Nobody can eat from it. But says the Mishnah, still you don't have to bring up another Pesach Sheni. Why? Because at the end of the day, you did the Shechita and you did the Zrika of the Dam. So since everything was done properly, even though nobody ate it, we already learned this in the past, if you remember, even though nobody ate it, you're still going to be Yitzhak Chova. Okay? That means even though you're not eating it. So the eating is the Lechatechila. But the Avad, if you cannot eat from it, you're still going to be Yitzhak Chova, which means you're not going to be obligated to do a Pesach Sheni. Says the Gemara, Pshita, it's obvious. One second. If right now the Adon did not tell him what, meaning the master did not tell him what to slaughter, obviously he could slaughter whatever he wants. So what's a chidush? What's a novelty? And so the Gemara, Shachat gdi yochal, af al gav deragil betle, shachat le yochal, af al gav deragil b'di. No, the common meaning, the chidush is that even though the master doesn't eat that, meaning right now the master went and he says, do for me a korban pesach. He didn't say what. Now usually this master always eats gdi. He always eats the kid. Remember, the kid is the child of the goat, yeah? Or he always eats tzleh. The servant could bring the opposite. Why? Even though he's normally, because he didn't explain. If he doesn't explain, he left it up to me. I want that it should be a delicacy, right? A delicatesse. So what's going to happen? I'm going to come and bring the opposite. So it's lichod echad, lichod pesach. And there's no problem. That's the chidush of the Gemara. So says the Gemara, the two dots again, shachat gdi v'tzleh yochal nishon. What happens if he did both? Right? He did both. So again, the master went and he told him, right, to see, he says over here, he told him, just bring me a korban pesach. And he brought both. So what happens? He does the first one. He eats the first one. So ask the Gemara, he says, 1 second, I thought that you cannot be registered unto do different pesachs. Right? Imagine right now you're going to be a Republican and Democrat at the same time. But it's the same. It's either one or the other. You cannot do two for ones here. So therefore, it's either you're part of one group, or you're part of another group. You can't be counted as two groups. So here, if he brought both the gedi and the tle, how does that work? Yeah, it doesn't work. So says the Gemara, matnitin b'melech malka. What happens is that our Mishnah is referring to a melech and a malka. What does that mean, a melech and malka? They are somchim always on their servants to prepare the seudah. And they're not makpidim what they actually prepare, whether it's a gedi or a tle. So therefore, if right now, right, their master went and their servant went and they did two different pesachim, one a gedi and one a tle, right, we don't need the din of breda to find out retroactively which one was datam. Ela from the beginning, right, we already know that it's good for both of them. So therefore, in such a scenario, we always go after the first one, not the second one. The second one was just stam, right? But so therefore that's why. But technically speaking, it wasn't that they were counted on both different korbanot. You didn't need that. So says the Gemara, we're going to bring a proof at Tanya, as we learned in a Braita. So it says, remember that usually whenever it's written Tanya, right, it says over here, if it's going to be a question, it's going to be written usually in Rashi Bitmiya, or sometimes it's written Benichuta, which means, so here's Benichuta, it's a proof. Tanya, as we learned in a Braita, you're not going to be counted on two different korban pesachs at once. But there was a story with a king and a queen. So they told their servants, go do the korban pesach for us. They did two pesachim, gdi and tle. They went and they asked them, he told them, go ask the queen. Right? She went and she told the queen. So she told them, go ask Rabban Gamliel. They went and asked Rabban Gamliel. Right? If they're going to be not going to be makpidim, yochlu min rishon. So eat from the first one. Anan lo nochal lo min rishon mishani. But we cannot eat not from the first one and not from the second one. Which means the king and the queen, they were not makpidim. They weren't strict whatever they're going to eat. So because of that, the first one is the most important because that's the first one that they did. The second one was in vain. But for us that we are makpidim, whether it is going to be a gedi or tle, we cannot eat from either or. Yeah, we're not eating from any. There was another time also that they found one of the leta'ah. The leta'ah is one of these, the lizard, exactly, which was one of the creepy crawlers, one of the 8 shmona shatzim, yeah, which are metamim, which impurify. So it says, bevet mitbachaim. So they once found this leta'ah in the bet mitbachaim, right? This is in the cheder shchita of the melech, of the king. So they wanted to come, and they thought that it was dead. So since they thought that it was dead, right? So they wanted to be mitamed, and the entire food of everything. Remember, Tumah v'Tara in the olden days, imagine, you find one of these creepy crawlers, Kaddish, everything that you had in the kitchen, imagine, you're making a wedding, yeah? Yeah, you're making a wedding. Yeah, in the way making a wedding, it's a bar mitzvah, it's not a wedding. Yeah? It's what, yeah, exactly. If it touches it, come on. I don't know what they're up to, but to tell him to come anyway. He's got an importance of coming to the Bet Knesset even without the minyan. Right? So what happened? They wanted to be metameh the entire Suda. They came and they asked the king, Amar lehem, go ask the Malka. When they asked the Malka, she went and she said, go ask Rabbi Gamliel. They asked him Gamliel. Amar lehem, he said, Bet mitbachayim roteach ot sonen. Says, 1 second, is this Bet mitbachayim? Is it hot or cold? So Amrulo, they told him, roteach, it's hot. Amar lehem, he said, lechu ve'otiru alea kos shel sonen. Go come and pour a cold cup of water on top of this letah. And all of a sudden it started moving. So the fact that it started moving, it was still alive. So he went and he did the entire thing. Right? Why? Because it's only b'motam that it's mitma, which means only when they die do they contaminate. If they're not dead, it does not contaminate still. So since they poured cold water, right? Which means that basically, I guess it was being dehydrated or whatever it is. It was very, very hot. So he pulled a cold water on the letah, and all of a sudden it started moving. So okay, it's still alive, no problem. Everything's still pure. It comes out that everything was always depending on the rabbis. Because the king was always depending on the queen was always Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel was the one that everything depends on him, on his shoulders. You heard? Everything's on his shoulders. Fine. 2 dots. What happens right now if a person forgot that which the master told them? Okay, so he doesn't remember. So what happens? Says the Gemara, right? So again, what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says he does both of them, and then he does it on condition that if the master said Gdi, so then the Gdi is the master's and the Tle is for him. If the master said Tle, the Tle is for the master and the Gdi is for him. So says the Gemara, Sheli, what does that mean? It's going to be mine. A slave has a very special deen. Whatever is his belongs to the master. So what does that mean? Okay, so if it's going to be, if the master said the Gdi, so the Gdi goes to the master and the Tle is mine. What do you mean mine? You don't have anything. You don't have an individuality. Anything that's yours belongs to the master. So says the Gemara, Abaye says, Holech etzel roya ragil rabo etzlo, denichale betekanta derabe, umakne lechad minayhu, al menat she'en lerabo reshut bo. Says, no, Abaye says very, very simple. What happened is that he went to purchase this animal by a ro'eh, by a shepherd, which usually the master used to go there. Now, it's good for the shepherd in the Takanat Adon in order to be Yitzchak Chovah with the Korban Pesach. So therefore, what happened? The makneh, the ro'eh, to the Eved, one of the Behemot, al menat she'en lerabo reshubo. So therefore, what happens is that there's a trick done. The shepherd is giving it to the Eved on condition that the master has nothing there. So if he's going to give something to the servant on condition that the master has no rights in it, it does belong only to the servant, not to the master. Okay? Yeah? Makes sense. Yeah? Okay. Shachach rabo ma she'amar lo. So now what happens now if the master forgot what he told him? So he says both of them go to the Bet HaSrefa, and they're going to be paturim from doing the Pesach Sheni. Amar Abaye comes and he says, Lo shanu ela sheshachach. That's only if he forgot after the zrikat adam. Right? The time that they were throwing the blood, it was still fitting for consumption. But if he forgot already before the sprinkling of the throwing of the blood, then it wasn't fitting for consumption. They are obligated to do the Korban Pesach Sheni, but they weren't using the Chovah with this Korban Pesach because the Zrikat Adam was done b'psul, which means that since the sprinkling of the blood was done with a psul, with a disqualification, they weren't using the Chovah, and now they do have to come and bring a Korban Pesach Sheni. Okay? Some people taught this, the words of Abaye, on the Braita. Imagine right now that they come and they skin the Korban Pesachs. Right? So they come, the first thing that you do is you always skin the animal. After skinning the animals, right, what happened is that you have 5 people, 5 groups, that the Korban Pesach, they do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're skinning all of them, and all of a sudden they found the Yabelet in one of those 5. Now Yabelet, it's like a growth. How do you call it in English? But Yabelet is a wart. Thank you, a wart. Yeah, so they found a wart. So in one of them. So now what happens is that we don't know who's it belonged to. Now obviously it came from one of these 5 people. So kulam yotzim lebet hatzrefa, right? So it says, but we don't know which one. So all of them have to go to the bet hatzrefa. Upturim minasu pesach sheni, and you're patur for doing the pesach sheni. So Amar Abaye, on this Abaye comes and he says, lo shanu ela shinitavu lachar zrika. This is only if they got mixed up only after the zrika. And the zrika dam, but it was fitting for consumption. But if these 5 animals got mixed up before the zrika, so now all of them, all these 5 groups now, because remember, are obligated to do now Pesach Sheni. Okay? So whoever said that it's going on our Mishnah, So kol sheken that he goes on the Braita. He says why? Because if in the case of the Mishnah, Abaye holds that when the safek comes before the zrikat adam, so then it's not fitting for consumption, you're obligated to eat Pesach Sheni, even though both of the korbanot are ksherim mitzad atzmam, right? But it's only just because you don't know who are the registered people there, who are the subscribers over there, right? So kol sheken in the case, in the second one, where it says that the safek pasul is because of a mum, for sure we're going to say that it's not going to be fitting for its consumption. It's going to be, you could say the words of the Baye. But the one that teaches it on the Braita, which is to do with the psulim, there was a psul here. Aval matniti, maybe by our Mishnah, no, maybe we wouldn't say that. Why? Since these both korbanot are kosher, if he would remember, he would be able to eat it. Let's say I would come and I would somehow be able to remind the Adon what he actually did say. He would be able to eat it. So because of that, if you only learn it in the Braita, we don't say for sure that it's going back on the Mishnah. So Kamesh Shemaya Galia, right? It is revealed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? And therefore, right? Therefore, he says over here, so therefore we wouldn't actually say it on the Braita. Okay? Fine. We wouldn't say it on the Mishnah, sorry. We wouldn't say it on the Mishnah. If you say it on the Braita, we wouldn't say it on the Mishnah. If you say it on the Mishnah, for sure you say it on the Braita. Fine. Next, Amar Mor. Upturim lasot Pesach Sheni. What does it mean that you're going to be patur for doing Pesach Sheni? Vayikachad lo nafak. He says, 1 second. There is a Bala Korban that was not Yitzhak Chovah, which means, how can you say that he's going to be Yitzhak Chovah? There's a Balmum, there's a Korban that has a Balmum. Now, we should obligate both of them to bring a Korban Sheni, right? Pesach Sheni. Why? Because each one has a Safek. We don't know who was the one that had a Balmum. So says the Gemara, Mishum Dilo Efshar, Hechi Laved, because you can't do it. Why? How are we going to do it exactly? Leiti Kulcha V'Chabed, is each one are going to bring another Korban Pesach Sheni because of Safek, Kameti Chulin Lazara. Meaning, if both of them are going to bring a Korban Pesach, it's Chulin Lazara. Chulin Lazara means you're not allowed to bring something which is not consecrated to the Bet HaMikdash. It's called Chulin. And you're bringing it to the Azara, you're not allowed to do that. It's not a no-la or something that's like, you could make a neder or nedava. Korban Pesach cannot be brought as a neder or nedava. Right? So he says, why? Because 4 of them already did a Korban Pesach. If everyone's going to bring one, so then it's going to be that the Korban Pesach is going to be eaten by people which were not subscribed. They were not registered. So you have the problem. So says the Gemara, Hai Mai. What Tana is that? Naiti kulcha minayu pischo, v'naitni v'neima ididi balmum, haidaiti ashadam v'pesach, v'ididi tam, haidaiti ashadam v'shlemin. He says, no, they should all bring a Korban Pesach Sheni, but make a condition. What's a condition? When they're going to bring the Korban Pesach Sheni, very simple. They should say, if the one that I brought was the balmum, so now right now this is the Korban Pesach, right? And that's it. But if right now mine was a good one, so what I'm bringing now is a shlamim. Right? But it's the same animal. You could bring it, it's a shlamim, you could say the shlamim. Says the Gemara, lo efshad, you can't do that. Why can't you do that? Says the Gemara, mishum de'ika chazeh v'shok tekohanim udach leleh. What about the chazeh v'shok? The chazeh v'shok, the kohanim are the ones that eat the chazeh v'shok. So he says the kohanim are the ones that eat the best areas, right? Which is the thigh and the chest area, the breast area. So he says over here, so if right now they're going to come and they're going to say it's a shlamim, so now they cannot be mekayim the mitzvah v'chilat chazeh v'shok to the kohen. Because in each one of them there's a safek, maybe it's a Korban Pesach, and therefore you cannot give the Kohanim the chazeh v'shok. Why? Because it's only limun yav, it's only for the people which are registered. So that means you're taking away from the Kohanim by the chazeh v'shok. So says the Gemara, fine, v'naiti kulcha v'chad kohen ba'adeh. So each one you should always have a kohen there, meaning each one of these people bring one of the registered people a kohen. So I'm going to bring my kohen, he's going to bring his kohen. Each one brings a kohen. So no matter what, they'll be able to eat the chazeh v'shok and give the kohen the chazeh v'shok. So it says, if he did a Korban Pesach, maybe it's a Pesach, and then it comes out Pesach Shlamim Yav. If he didn't do a Korban Pesach already, so maybe it's a Shlamim, and then he didn't do Pesach. Okay, so Blina will continue tomorrow.